Imagine this. You're scrolling through dating apps in your Chicago apartment at 11 p.m., swiping through endless profiles of people who seem perfect in photos but leave you feeling empty after every conversation. Or maybe you're in a relationship that started with fireworks but now feels like you're walking on eggshells, constantly worried about when the magic will fade. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. And you're definitely not the first person in history to struggle with love. 2,000 years ago, in ancient Greece and Rome, philosophers called Stoics were grappling with the exact same questions about love, relationships, and human connection that keep us up at night today. But here's what's fascinating. They figured out solutions that our modern world has completely forgotten. While we're busy chasing romantic highs and trying to find the one who will complete us, these ancient thinkers had already mapped out a completely different approach to love, one that actually works. The Stoics weren't cold, emotionless people who avoided relationships. That's probably the biggest misconception about them. They were passionate about human connection, but they understood something crucial that we've lost in our swipe-right culture. The difference between love that enslaves you and love that sets you free. They knew how to love deeply without losing themselves, how to commit fully without becoming possessive, and how to handle heartbreak without falling apart. Think about Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who wrote some of history's most beautiful passages about love and loss. Or Epictetus, who taught that genuine love is one of the most powerful forces in human life. These weren't people who avoided emotions. They were people who understood how to navigate them wisely. What made their approach so different from ours? They recognized that most of what we call love today is actually something else entirely. A mixture of need, fear, and desire that creates more suffering than joy. They saw that when we make another person responsible for our happiness, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. When we cling to someone out of fear of being alone, we're not really loving them, we're using them. But the Stoics also discovered something incredible. When you learn to love without clinging, when you care deeply without being possessive, when you commit fully while accepting that nothing lasts forever, you actually experience a deeper, more satisfying kind of connection than anything our culture promises. This isn't about becoming detached or indifferent. It's about becoming free to love more fully than you ever thought possible. In today's world, where relationships are often treated like consumer products and people are discarded the moment they stop providing excitement, this ancient wisdom feels revolutionary. We're going to explore how Stoic principles can transform not just how you approach dating and relationships, but how you experience love itself. You'll discover why the pursuit of romantic love often leaves us empty, how to enjoy physical intimacy without losing your peace of mind, and the secret to building relationships that actually make both people better. But what exactly makes Stoic love different from what we see everywhere today? Let's start with the most fundamental distinction these philosophers made, one that changes everything once you understand it. 1. The difference between love and lust that changes everything. Sarah works at a tech startup in San Francisco, and she's been dating Mike for 3 months. Everything feels perfect. The chemistry is incredible. She can't stop thinking about him, and when they're together, the world disappears. But lately, she's noticed something troubling. When Mike doesn't text back immediately, she feels anxious. When he mentions hanging out with female coworkers, jealousy creeps in. When he's busy with work and can't see her, she feels almost desperate. This must be love, she tells herself, because it feels so intense. But according to the ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus, Sarah might be confusing love with something entirely different, and this confusion is setting her up for serious emotional turmoil. Epictetus made a distinction that most people today have never heard of, but once you understand it, it changes how you see every relationship in your life. He divided everything in existence into two categories: things that are up to us and things that are not up to us. Things that are up to us, he said, are by nature free, unrestrained, unhindered. Things that are not up to us are weak, slavish, restrained, belonging to others. Now, here's where this gets interesting for relationships. According to Epictetus, true love, the kind that brings peace and joy rather than anxiety and suffering, falls into the first category. It's completely within your control. You can choose to love someone regardless of how they treat you, whether they love you back or what happens to them. This love doesn't depend on their behavior, their appearance, or their feelings toward you. It's unconditional, which means it's unshakable. Think about the love a parent has for their child. Even if that child makes mistakes, rebels, or goes through difficult phases, the parent's love remains constant. It doesn't fluctuate based on the child's performance or mood. This is the kind of love Epictetus was talking about, love that comes from your own choice to care for someone's well-being, not from what they do for you. But lust, and this is where things get uncomfortable, falls into the second category. Epictetus defined lust as a craving for the body of another human being. Notice he didn't say physical attraction is wrong or that sexual desire is bad. He specifically called it a craving, an intense need for something outside your control. When you lust after someone, your emotional state depends entirely on their availability, their interest in you, and their physical presence. If they're not available, you suffer. If they reject you, you're devastated. If they're with someone else, you're consumed by jealousy. Let's go back to Sarah's situation. The intensity she's feeling isn't necessarily love. It might be lust disguised as love. Her emotional state depends entirely on Mike's actions and responses. When he's attentive, she feels high. When he's distant, she feels low. She's essentially given him control over her inner peace, which means she's no longer free. This doesn't mean Sarah's feelings are wrong or that she should suppress them, but understanding this distinction gives her power. She can choose to love Mike, to genuinely care about his well-being, support his growth, and enjoy his company, without making her happiness dependent on his behavior. She can appreciate their physical connection without being enslaved by it. Here's a practical way to tell the difference in your own life. Ask yourself, if this person suddenly became unavailable to me, if they moved away, started dating someone else, or simply lost interest, would I still want good things for them? Would I still care about their happiness and success? If the answer is yes, you're probably experiencing genuine love. If the answer is, I'd be devastated and might even want them to suffer, you're likely dealing with lust or attachment disguised as love. Marcus, a lawyer in New York, learned this lesson the hard way. He was obsessed with his coworker Emma, constantly finding excuses to talk to her, analyzing every interaction, and feeling jealous whenever she talked to other men. When she started dating someone else, he was crushed. But after discovering Stoic philosophy, he realized he had never actually loved Emma. He had been lusting after the idea of being with her, the validation it would give him, and the way she made him feel about himself. Once he understood this, He was able to genuinely wish her happiness in her new relationship, and his obsession disappeared. The Stoics weren't trying to eliminate physical attraction or sexual desire from human life. They understood that these are natural parts of being human, but they recognized that when we mistake intense craving for love, we set ourselves up for suffering. Real love, they taught, makes you freer, not less free. It expands your capacity for joy rather than making you dependent on another person for your emotional stability. This understanding transforms how you approach dating and relationships. Instead of looking for someone who gives you that intoxicating rush of infatuation, you start looking for someone you can genuinely care about, someone whose character you respect, whose goals you can support, and whose well-being matters to you regardless of what they do for you in return. But here's what makes this even more powerful. When you love someone this way, without the desperate clinging that comes from lust, you actually become more attractive to them. People are naturally drawn to those who are emotionally stable and secure. When you're not constantly seeking validation or trying to control their behavior, you create space for a much deeper and more satisfying connection to develop. The ancient Stoics understood something our culture has forgotten. The relationships that bring the most joy are the ones where both people are free to choose each other every day, not bound together by need, fear, or craving. But to understand why this matters so much, we need to look at what happens when we get this backwards. When we make romantic feelings the foundation of our relationships instead of genuine care and respect. 2. Why romantic love leaves you empty, the honeymoon phase trap. Jessica and David met at a rooftop party in Los Angeles 6 months ago, and it was like something out of a movie. They talked until sunrise, felt like they'd known each other forever, and couldn't bear to be apart. For the first 3 months, everything was perfect. David seemed like the most amazing man who ever lived. Funny, successful, attractive, and completely devoted to her. Jessica felt like she was living in a fairy tale. But now things are different. David leaves his dishes in the sink, which drives Jessica crazy. He's not as attentive as he used to be, often checking his phone while she's talking. The sex isn't as passionate as it was in the beginning. Jessica finds herself thinking, "This isn't the man I fell in love with. What happened to the magic we had?" Jessica is experiencing what the Stoics identified as one of the most destructive forces in human relationships: the elevation of romantic feelings to the level of ultimate importance. In our culture, we've made romantic love into what philosophers call an ultimate concern. Something so important that it takes precedence over everything else, including our own well-being, our values, and sometimes even our spiritual beliefs. Think about how we talk about romantic love in America. We say things like, "I can't live without you," "You complete me," and "You're my everything." We create movies where people abandon their families, careers, and moral principles for romantic passion. We write songs about love being worth dying for. In many ways, romantic love has become the secular religion of our time, promising salvation through finding the one. But here's what the Stoics understood that we've forgotten. This kind of romantic love is built on an illusion, and when that illusion inevitably crumbles, it leaves people feeling cheated, angry, and desperate to find that high again with someone new. The illusion starts with what we now call the honeymoon phase, that period of intense infatuation where your brain is literally flooded with chemicals like dopamine, norepinephrine, and phenylethylamine. During this phase, you genuinely can't see your partner's flaws. Your brain is essentially on drugs, creating a temporary state of euphoria that feels like the most important thing that's ever happened to you. Epictetus would have recognized this immediately as what he called a passion, an emotional state based on false judgments about reality. When Jessica looked at David during those first few months, she wasn't seeing David. She was seeing her projection of David, enhanced by her brain chemistry and filtered through her own needs and fantasies. The Stoics understood that this kind of intense romantic feeling serves an evolutionary purpose. It bonds people together long enough to procreate and care for offspring during their most vulnerable period. But they also recognized that mistaking this temporary chemical state for true love creates enormous suffering when it inevitably fades. And it always fades. The human brain can't maintain that level of chemical intensity indefinitely. Usually within 6 months to 2 years, the neurochemical cocktail that creates infatuation begins to normalize. Suddenly, you start seeing your partner as they actually are, a regular human being with flaws, bad habits, and their own set of problems. This is when many people feel cheated or disappointed, as if their partner has somehow changed or deceived them. Marcus, a marketing executive in Miami, describes it perfectly. "I thought I'd found my soulmate with Rachel. For the first year, she could do no wrong. Then one day, I noticed she chewed her food loudly, and it was like a spell was broken. Suddenly, I saw all these things about her that annoyed me. I started wondering if I'd made a mistake, if maybe my real soulmate was still out there." This is what the Stoics called clinging and aversion, the tendency to desperately grasp onto pleasurable experiences and push away anything that threatens them. When we're in the honeymoon phase, we cling to those intense feelings of infatuation. We become addicted to the high of romantic love. When that high starts to fade, we experience aversion. We resist the natural progression of the relationship and often blame our partner for no longer providing us with those feelings. Epictetus warned about this exact pattern when he said, "He who fails to obtain the object of his desire is disappointed, and he who incurs the object of his aversion is wretched." In romantic relationships, this creates a no-win situation. Either you don't get the intense romantic feelings you crave, which makes you disappointed, or you get them and then lose them, which makes you feel wretched. This is why so many people become serial daters, constantly seeking that next romantic high. They meet someone new, experience the rush of infatuation, mistake it for true love, commit to the relationship, and then feel disappointed when the honeymoon phase ends. Instead of recognizing this as a normal part of human bonding, they assume they've chosen the wrong person and start looking for someone who can give them that feeling again. Social media has made this problem even worse. We're constantly exposed to other people's highlight reels, their vacation photos, their romantic gestures, their seemingly perfect relationships. When your own relationship feels ordinary by comparison, it's easy to think you're missing out on something better. The grass always looks greener when you're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's carefully curated social media presence. But here's the deeper problem the Stoics identified. Romantic love, as our culture defines it, is fundamentally self-serving. When Jessica says she loves David, what she really means is, David makes me feel good about myself. When that stops being true, her love disappears. This isn't love at all. It's using another person as a drug to regulate your own emotions. Real love, according to the Stoics, isn't about how someone makes you feel. It's about genuinely caring for their well-being, regardless of what they do for you. It's about wanting them to flourish as human beings, even if that flourishing doesn't always serve your interests. This kind of love doesn't depend on chemistry or feelings. It's a choice you make based on your values and character. The jealousy that often accompanies romantic love is a perfect example of how destructive this pattern can be. When you're romantically attached to someone, you become terrified of losing them to someone else. This fear drives you to try to control their behavior, checking their phone, questioning their friendships, and demanding constant reassurance. You become possessive, treating another human being like property that belongs to you. Lisa, a nurse in Boston, found herself doing exactly this with her boyfriend Jake. "I became someone I didn't recognize," she says. "I was constantly worried he was going to leave me for someone prettier or more interesting. I started checking his Instagram likes, getting upset when he talked to female coworkers, and demanding to know where he was every minute of the day. The relationship became exhausting for both of us." The Stoics would say that Lisa's jealousy was making her wretched, exactly what Epictetus warned about. She was trying to control something that wasn't up to her, Jake's feelings and choices, which inevitably led to suffering. Her possessiveness wasn't protecting her relationship, it was destroying it. This doesn't mean the Stoics were against passion or physical attraction. They understood these are natural parts of human experience. But they recognized that building a relationship primarily on romantic feelings is like building a house on sand. It might feel solid at first, but it won't withstand the storms that inevitably come. So if romantic love isn't the answer, how did the Stoics approach physical attraction and sexual desire? How do you enjoy the pleasures of intimate connection without becoming enslaved by them? That's what we need to explore next. 3. How to enjoy physical intimacy without losing your peace. Alex, a software engineer in Seattle, had always struggled with casual dating. Every time he slept with someone, he'd find himself becoming emotionally attached, even when he knew the relationship wasn't going anywhere. He'd start checking his phone constantly, waiting for texts that might never come. He'd analyze every interaction, wondering if she was losing interest. What started as physical attraction would quickly turn into anxiety, neediness, and eventual heartbreak. "I thought I had two choices," Alex explains. "Either avoid physical intimacy completely, or accept that I'd always be a mess emotionally whenever I was with someone. I didn't realize there was a third option." The Stoics weren't monks. They didn't advocate for celibacy or the complete avoidance of physical pleasure. In fact, they had a surprisingly balanced and practical approach to sexual intimacy, one that allowed them to enjoy physical connection without becoming enslaved by it. Their secret was understanding the difference between pleasure and attachment, between enjoying something and needing it. Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about this balance. He considered the excessive indulgence in lust to be among the worst of human failings, saying that those who are abandoned to the belly and lust bear the stain of dishonor. But notice the word abandoned. He wasn't condemning physical pleasure itself, but rather the loss of self-control that comes from being ruled by it. In Seneca's view, there were worse ways to sin than through lust. Being quick to anger, being greedy, or being violent were actually more destructive to one's character. But sexual obsession was particularly dangerous because it could so easily consume a person's entire life, making them incapable of rational thought or virtuous action. However, Seneca also recognized what he called the joy of intercourse as what Stoics termed a preferred indifferent. This is a crucial concept to understand. In Stoic philosophy, preferred indifferents are things that are naturally pleasant and can contribute to a good life, but they're not essential for virtue or happiness. Health is a preferred indifferent. It's nice to have, but you can still live a virtuous life without perfect health. Wealth is a preferred indifference. It can make life easier, but it's not necessary for a meaningful existence. Sexual pleasure falls into this same category. It's naturally enjoyable. It can enhance your life when experienced appropriately, but it shouldn't become the center of your existence or the measure of your worth. The key is moderation, enjoying it when it's available without becoming desperate when it's not. This approach completely transformed how Alex handled dating. Instead of either avoiding physical intimacy or being consumed by it, he learned to enjoy it as one pleasant aspect of human connection without making it the foundation of his emotional well-being. I can appreciate physical chemistry with someone without needing it to mean we're soulmates, he says. I can enjoy the moment without immediately planning our future together. The Stoics also had deep respect for marriage and committed relationships, but for reasons that might surprise you. Seneca valued marriage not because of romantic love or sexual satisfaction, but because it provided a framework for virtue. He saw marriage as a way to practice loyalty, commitment, and mutual care, all essential aspects of a virtuous life. This is why Seneca opposed divorce and adultery so strongly. It wasn't because he was prudish about sex, but because breaking commitments and betraying trust violated the Stoic principles of justice and integrity. When you make a promise to someone, whether it's a marriage vow or an agreement to be exclusive, keeping that promise is a matter of character, regardless of how you feel. Musonius Rufus, another Stoic philosopher, took this even further. He considered mutual care to be the cornerstone of marriage, describing it as complete companionship and concern for each other on the part of both husband and wife, in health and in sickness and at all times. Notice that physical attraction isn't mentioned here. The foundation is mutual care and shared commitment to each other's well-being. This doesn't mean physical intimacy wasn't important in Stoic marriages, but it was viewed as one expression of love and care, not the primary reason for the relationship. When physical intimacy was grounded in genuine affection and mutual respect, it enhanced the partnership. When it became the main focus, it could actually undermine the deeper connection. Sarah, a teacher in Denver, discovered this principle in her own marriage. My husband and I went through a period where we were so focused on the physical aspects of our relationship that we stopped really talking to each other, she explains. We were having great sex, but we weren't connecting as people. When we shifted our focus back to genuinely caring for each other, supporting each other's goals, being emotionally present, working through problems together, the physical intimacy actually became more meaningful. Musonius Rufus observed that marriages fail when individuals pursue only their own interests and neglect their partners. This creates what he called affectionless marriages, where people seek pleasure outside the home, leading to an existence worse than loneliness. The solution wasn't to focus more on physical satisfaction, but to return to the foundation of mutual care and shared purpose. This Stoic approach offers a completely different way of thinking about modern dating and relationships. Instead of using physical intimacy as a way to create an emotional connection, you first build genuine care and respect for the other person. Physical attraction can be part of the relationship, but it's not the driving force. Consider how this might change your approach to dating apps. Instead of focusing primarily on physical attraction and sexual chemistry, you'd look for someone whose character you respect, whose values align with yours, and whose well-being you genuinely care about. Physical attraction might be the initial draw, but it wouldn't be the foundation of your interest. This approach also eliminates a lot of the anxiety and game playing that characterizes modern dating. When you're not depending on sexual validation for your self-worth, you can be more authentic and relaxed. You're not constantly wondering if you're attractive enough or performing well enough because your sense of value doesn't depend on another person's desire for you. Jake, a chef in Portland, found this liberating. I used to think that if a woman wasn't immediately attracted to me physically, the relationship was doomed, he says. But when I started focusing on building genuine friendships first, I discovered that attraction often develops naturally when there's real connection and mutual respect. Some of my best relationships started with women I wasn't initially attracted to, but who I grew to care about deeply. The Stoics understood that physical desire is a natural part of human experience, but they refused to let it dominate their lives or compromise their values. They enjoyed physical pleasure when it was available and appropriate, but they didn't depend on it for their happiness or sense of worth. This balanced approach becomes even more important when we consider how to love someone deeply without becoming possessive or needy. The Stoics discovered that the secret to lasting love isn't holding on tighter, it's learning to love with an open hand. For how to love someone without being needy, the Stoic attachment secret. Maria had been with her boyfriend Tom for 2 years, and she was driving herself crazy. Every time he went out with friends, she worried he might meet someone else. When he didn't respond to her texts immediately, she imagined the worst. She found herself constantly seeking reassurance. Do you still love me? Are we okay? You're not going to leave me, are you? She knew her behavior was pushing him away, but she couldn't stop herself. The more she tried to hold on to him, the more distant he became. I felt like I was drowning, Maria recalls. I loved Tom so much that the thought of losing him terrified me. But my fear of losing him was actually destroying our relationship. I didn't know how to love him without clinging to him. Maria's struggle illustrates one of the most challenging aspects of human relationships. How do you care deeply for someone without becoming attached in a way that creates suffering for both of you? The Stoics had a radical answer to this question, one that seems counterintuitive at first but becomes incredibly liberating once you understand it. The key insight comes from Epictetus, who taught his students to think about their loved ones in a completely different way. He said, "Never say of anything, 'I have lost it,' but 'I have returned it.' Is your child dead? It is returned. Is your wife dead? She is returned." At first glance, this might seem cold or heartless, but Epictetus wasn't trying to minimize the importance of our relationships. He was offering a perspective that could free us from the anxiety and possessiveness that often destroy the very connections we're trying to protect. The philosophy behind this approach is profound. Epictetus taught that we never truly own the people we love. Our spouses, children, friends, and romantic partners are not possessions that belong to us. They are independent human beings who have chosen, for now, to share their lives with us. When we think of them as things we own, we inevitably become possessive, controlling, and fearful of losing them. But when we think of our loved ones as gifts that have been temporarily entrusted to our care, everything changes. We become grateful for the time we have with them rather than anxious about when that time might end. We focus on loving them well in the present moment rather than trying to control their future choices. We appreciate their autonomy rather than seeing it as a threat to our security. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or emotionally distant. The Stoics weren't advocating for detachment in the sense of not caring. They were advocating for what we might call non-attachment, caring deeply while accepting that the outcome is not entirely up to you. Consider how this perspective might have helped Maria. Instead of seeing Tom as her boyfriend, who might be taken away from her, she could see him as someone who was choosing to be with her each day. Instead of fearing his independence, she could appreciate it as part of what made him the person she cared about. Instead of trying to control his behavior to prevent him from leaving, she could focus on being the kind of person he would want to choose again and again. Musonius Rufus, another Stoic philosopher, provided a practical framework for this kind of love in his teachings about marriage. He described the ideal marriage as one built on mutual care, a relationship where both partners are genuinely concerned for each other's well-being, not just their own emotional needs. Complete companionship and concern for each other on the part of both husband and wife, in health and in sickness and at all times, is how Musonius Rufus described it. Notice that this isn't about finding someone who makes you feel complete or fulfilled. It's about two complete individuals choosing to care for each other's flourishing. This kind of mutual care requires emotional maturity and security. You can't genuinely care for someone else's well-being if you're constantly worried about your own emotional needs not being met. You can't be a good partner if you're using the relationship primarily as a source of validation or security. David, a financial advisor in Atlanta, learned this lesson after his first marriage ended. I was so focused on what my wife could do for me, make me feel loved, provide emotional support, validate my worth, that I never really considered what I could do for her, he reflects. I was needy and demanding without realizing it. When she finally left, I was devastated, but I also realized I had never really loved her. I had been using her. In his second marriage, David approached things differently. I focused on being someone worth choosing, he says. Instead of asking what she could do for me, I asked what I could do to support her goals and happiness. Instead of being afraid she might leave, I worked on being the kind of person she would want to stay with. The relationship became so much more peaceful and satisfying for both of us. This shift from "what can you do for me?" to "what can I do for you?" is at the heart of Stoic love. It's the difference between using someone for your own emotional needs and genuinely caring about their well-being. When both partners approach the relationship this way, it creates a positive cycle where each person's care for the other naturally encourages more care in return. But what about the fear of loss that drives so much neediness in relationships? The Stoics had a unique approach to this as well. Instead of trying to prevent loss by clinging tighter, they practiced accepting loss as a natural part of life. This might sound pessimistic, but it's actually incredibly freeing. When you accept that everything in life is temporary, including your relationships, you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable. Instead, you can focus on appreciating what you have while you have it. You can love fully in the present moment without being paralyzed by fear of the future. Jennifer, a nurse in Phoenix, discovered this after going through a difficult breakup. I spent so much time in my previous relationships worrying about when they would end that I never fully enjoyed them while they were happening, she explains. Now I try to appreciate my partner for who he is today, without needing guarantees about tomorrow. It's actually made me more present and loving, not less. This approach even applies to situations like infidelity or betrayal. If your partner cheats on you, the Stoic perspective would be to see this as them returning themselves to the dating pool rather than as something being taken from you. This doesn't mean you shouldn't have boundaries or standards. You absolutely should. But it means you don't have to see their choices as a reflection of your worth or as something that was done to you. The practical benefits of this mindset are enormous. When you're not constantly worried about losing your partner, you can be more authentic and relaxed in the relationship. When you're not trying to control their behavior, they feel more free to choose you genuinely. When you're focused on caring for their well-being rather than managing your own insecurities, the relationship becomes a source of joy rather than anxiety. This doesn't happen overnight. Learning to love without clinging is a skill that takes practice. But the Stoics believed it was one of the most important skills a person could develop, not just for the sake of better relationships, but for the sake of inner peace and personal freedom. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it doesn't just make you a better partner, it makes you a better person. When you learn to care for someone's well-being without needing anything in return, when you can appreciate their choices even when they don't serve your interests, when you can love fully while accepting impermanence, you develop a kind of emotional strength and maturity that serves you in every area of life. But there's an even deeper level to Stoic love that goes beyond just learning to love without attachment. The Stoics discovered that the most fulfilling relationships are those where both partners actively help each other become better people. This is where love becomes not just a feeling or even a choice, but a force for mutual transformation. 5. The secret to relationships that actually make you better. When Rachel and Kevin met at a bookstore in Chicago 3 years ago, they were both struggling with personal challenges. Rachel was trying to overcome her tendency to procrastinate on important projects, while Kevin was working on managing his quick temper that had damaged previous relationships. Instead of just accepting each other's flaws or trying to change each other through criticism, they did something remarkable. They became partners in each other's growth. When I'd put off working on my novel for weeks, Kevin wouldn't nag me or get frustrated, Rachel explains. Instead, he'd ask thoughtful questions like, "What's making this feel overwhelming?" And, "How can I support you in taking the next small step?" He helped me understand my patterns without making me feel judged. And when he'd get irritated in traffic or with difficult people, I gently remind him of the breathing techniques he was learning, or just sit with him quietly until he could find his center again. What Rachel and Kevin discovered, without knowing it, was what the Stoics called the highest purpose of intimate relationships: the facilitation of virtue. This concept goes far beyond just being supportive or accepting of each other. It means actively helping your partner become the best version of themselves, while they do the same for you. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus taught that marriage should serve as what we might call a vessel for good, a container that enables both people to practice virtue more effectively than they could alone. This isn't about finding someone who's already perfect or trying to fix someone who's broken. It's about two people who are committed to growth, choosing to support each other's journey toward becoming more courageous, more just, more wise, and more moderate. Think about how revolutionary this approach is compared to typical relationship advice. Most of the time, we're told to either accept people exactly as they are or to find someone who already meets all our criteria. But the Stoics understood that the most fulfilling relationships are those where both people are actively evolving, and where that evolution is supported and encouraged by their partner. This doesn't mean being preachy or constantly pointing out each other's flaws. Marcus, a teacher in San Antonio, learned this the hard way with his girlfriend Lisa. "I thought helping her become better meant constantly giving her advice and pointing out areas where she could improve," he recalls. "But that just made her feel criticized and defensive. I realized I was trying to control her growth instead of supporting it." True virtue facilitation is much more subtle and respectful. It means creating an environment where growth is encouraged, celebrating small improvements, asking questions that help your partner reflect on their own goals, and modeling the kind of behavior you hope to see. It's about being a witness to their journey rather than trying to direct it. Sarah, a marketing manager in Nashville, describes how this works in her marriage. "My husband James has always struggled with confidence in professional situations. Instead of telling him what to do or trying to boost his ego with empty reassurances, I help him reflect on past successes and identify specific skills he wants to develop. When he comes home from a meeting where he spoke up more than usual, I celebrate that growth with him. When he's preparing for a challenging presentation, I listen to him practice and ask questions that help him think through potential responses. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it creates a positive feedback loop. When you help your partner grow, they naturally want to support your growth in return. When both people are committed to becoming better versions of themselves, the relationship becomes energizing rather than draining. But virtue facilitation goes beyond just personal development. It also means making decisions together that serve something larger than your individual interests. The Stoics believed that virtuous people naturally care about the well-being of their community, their society, and future generations. When two people share this commitment, their relationship becomes a force for good in the world. Consider how this might influence major life decisions. Instead of just asking what's best for us as a couple, you might ask, what choice would allow us to contribute most meaningfully to the world? This could influence career decisions where you choose to live, how you spend your money, or how you raise your children. David and Michelle, a couple in Portland, exemplify this approach. When David was offered a high-paying job that would require long hours and frequent travel, they didn't just consider the financial benefits or the impact on their relationship. They also thought about how the decision would affect David's ability to be present for their children, whether the work aligned with their values, and how they could use any additional income to support causes they cared about. We realized that taking the job might improve our financial situation, but it wouldn't help either of us become the kind of people we wanted to be, Michelle explains. David turned it down and found a position that paid less but allowed him to be more present as a father and husband. That decision has strengthened our relationship because it was based on our shared values rather than just immediate gratification. This approach to decision-making requires both partners to have clarity about their values and long-term goals. It means regularly discussing not just what you want, but who you want to become. It means being willing to sacrifice short-term pleasures for long-term growth and meaning. The Stoics also understood that virtue facilitation requires resilience through challenges. Every couple faces difficulties, financial stress, health problems, family conflicts, career setbacks. In most relationships, these challenges create tension and conflict as each person focuses on their own needs and fears. But when both partners are committed to virtue, Challenges become opportunities to practice courage, patience, and mutual support. When Tom lost his job unexpectedly, he and his wife Jennifer could have let the stress drive them apart. Instead, they used the situation as a chance to practice Stoic principles together. We focused on what we could control: our spending, Tom's job search strategy, and our attitude toward the situation, Jennifer recalls. Instead of letting fear and blame take over, we supported each other in staying calm and taking productive action. The experience actually brought us closer together because we faced it as a team committed to handling it with virtue. This kind of partnership requires emotional maturity from both people. You can't help someone else grow if you're not committed to your own growth. You can't support your partner's virtue development if you're primarily focused on what they can do for you. This is why the Stoics emphasized that virtue must be cultivated individually before it can be shared in relationship. But when it works, this approach creates something extraordinary. A relationship that makes both people stronger, wiser, and more capable of contributing to the world. Instead of two people clinging to each other for emotional security, you have two people choosing each other as partners in the most important project of human life, becoming the best version of yourself. The practical benefits extend far beyond personal growth. Couples who approach their relationship this way report higher levels of satisfaction, better communication, more resilience during difficult times, and a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in their partnership. Their children grow up seeing what healthy, growth-oriented love looks like. Their friends and family are inspired by their example. This is what the Stoics meant when they said that virtue is its own reward. When you build a relationship around mutual virtue development, you don't just get a better relationship, you get a better life. You become the kind of person who attracts other growth-oriented people. You develop skills and character traits that serve you in every area of life. You contribute to creating the kind of world you want to live in. But understanding these principles is just the beginning. The real question is, how do you start implementing this ancient wisdom in your own relationships and dating life? How do you begin the journey from needy, attachment-based love to the kind of virtue-centered connection the Stoics described? Your Stoic love journey starts now. Transform your relationships today. If you've made it this far, you've discovered something that most people never learn. That the ancient Stoics understood love and relationships better than our entire modern culture. You now know the difference between love and lust, why romantic attachment creates suffering, how to enjoy physical intimacy without losing your peace, the secret to loving without neediness, and how relationships can become vehicles for mutual growth and virtue. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The real question is, what are you going to do with these insights starting today? If you're single, this wisdom can completely transform how you approach dating. Instead of desperately seeking someone to complete you, focus on becoming the kind of person worth choosing. Ask yourself different questions when you meet someone new. Instead of, does this person make me feel good? Ask, do I respect how this person treats others? Instead of, is there chemistry? Ask, do our values align in ways that could support mutual virtue development? If you're currently in a relationship, you have an incredible opportunity to begin implementing these principles immediately. Start practicing non-attachment by appreciating your partner for who they are today without needing guarantees about tomorrow. Look for opportunities to support your partner's growth without being controlling. Create an environment where they feel safe to be vulnerable about their struggles and dreams. For those dealing with relationship anxiety, jealousy, or neediness, begin practicing the return philosophy that Epictetus taught. When you feel fear about losing your partner, remind yourself that they were never yours to own in the first place. They are a gift in your life, and gifts are meant to be appreciated, not clung to. Remember Seneca's teaching about moderation with physical desire. Enjoy physical intimacy as one of life's pleasures without making it the center of your existence. Let physical connection be an expression of care rather than a way to create emotional security. Most importantly, start developing the virtues that make you capable of Stoic love. Practice courage by being honest about your feelings. Develop justice by treating others with respect. Cultivate wisdom by learning from your mistakes. Build moderation by enjoying pleasures without being enslaved by them. This journey requires patience with yourself. You've probably spent years learning patterns of attachment and neediness. Changing these patterns takes time and consistent practice. Be compassionate with yourself when you slip back into old habits. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress toward a more virtuous way of loving. The Stoics believed that we have a responsibility to contribute to the flourishing of our communities. When you build relationships based on virtue rather than neediness, you're not just improving your personal life, you're modeling a better way of being human for everyone around you. Your journey toward Stoic love starts with a single choice. The choice to value virtue over feeling, growth over comfort, giving over taking. Make that choice today and then make it again tomorrow. Each time you choose virtue over attachment, you're building the kind of character that makes truly fulfilling relationships possible. If this video has opened your eyes to a better way of loving, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to Stoic Vivu for more life-changing ancient wisdom that actually works in the modern world. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest insights. And please share this video with someone who needs to hear these truths about love and relationships.